This is my first time posting a story, so please be kind in the comments. I'm a 19-year-old female, but at the time this creepy encounter happened, I was maybe 7 or 8, 10 at the oldest. I have a horrible memory. Just ask the guy I've been with for the past year. However, these encounters I remember as if they were yesterday. My mom and dad had been separated ever since I was very young. Having me when they were young made them feel like they needed to go out and have all the fun they missed out on when they were in their 20s. My mom had taken me to her friend Beatrice's house for a party. I always hated this friend. She was always so mean to me and my brother, calling me mean names and rhyming my name with very crude things. I don't even think I told mom or dad because I've always been very shy and wanting people to be happy with me. Arriving at the party, Beatrice immediately called me a mean name and sent me to the bedroom. Her bedroom that locked from the inside. That was where I would be sleeping for the night while all the adults partied downstairs. I guess my mom couldn't find a babysitter at the time, or maybe she didn't have the money for a babysitter. I don't remember where my brother was, but he wasn't with me, making me feel even more alone. My mom came upstairs to tuck me in and told me to make sure to lock the door once she left, to not let anyone in no matter what. If she needed to come in, she would call my name and tell me that it was her. Being the compliant little girl that I was, I swore I wouldn't open the door to anyone. As my mother left to go get drunk, I locked the door and made sure that it was locked. I didn't want my mother to be disappointed in me if the door wasn't locked. After checking the door several times, I went to bed. I laid on my back listening to the Latin music being played and all the people laughing and obviously having a good time. I slowly drifted off to sleep. I awoke to hear the knob to Beatrice's door jingling as if someone was trying to come in. That was strange, I thought. I didn't know how long I slept. Maybe it was my mom telling me it was time to go home. But it was still dark, and I could hear the laughter and joy filling the living room downstairs. The door started jingling again, but more subtle now, as if the person on the other side knew there was a little girl sleeping in the room. I froze, having a sinking feeling in my gut. Instinct, maybe. I knew whoever was on the other side of the door did not have good intentions for me. My eyes were strained on the door, or the direction of the door, as there was a wall that blocked the view of the actual door. If you entered the room, you would be in a mini hallway going into the bathroom. My eyes had grown accustomed to the darkness, and all I could do was lay frozen on my back with my eyes trained in the direction of the door. After what felt like an hour of this person trying to get in the room, they gave up. I could hear them walk downstairs and rejoin the party. I was terrified, kept my ears strained to see if I could hear the slightest jingle of the knob, and my eye trained in the direction of the door. I did not know what to do. Mind you, I was a shy little girl who also had an adult who would bully her, so going downstairs wasn't an option. Maybe they wouldn't come back. I awoke again to the same noise, doorknob jiggling. Petrified, I laid in bed and prayed that they wouldn't be able to come in. Why did they want to get in so badly? This time was different. It wasn't the soft jingle of trying to get in and not wake up the sleeping girl. It was frantic and terrifying and seemed like they were on a mission to get in here if it was the last thing they did. Click. They were in. He was in. As I laid in bed, he poked his head from the side of the wall, from where the door was. Why aren't you downstairs? I stayed silent. Come downstairs and drink. Silence. You're beautiful. Come. This time I shook my head. Okay, maybe later, baby. Then he left. Just like that, I felt my innocence leave my tiny being. I got up and ran to the door and locked it and ran back to the bed and cried. Thinking back, he could have easily been hiding in the entryway and just closing the door for show, making it seem like he had left and waiting for me to fall back asleep. Thankfully, he wasn't. I tried to keep my eyes open and ear on alert, so that if he came back, I wouldn't be caught off guard. I don't exactly remember what happened the next day, but I do remember telling my mom that a man came into my room last night. I got yelled at for not locking the door, but I had insisted that I did, and that the man kept trying to get in even when the door was clearly locked. I don't recall if I told my mom what he said to me, but I described him to my mother. A tall man with brownish skin, glasses and jet black hair, and was very good looking. I had seen him around a few times, but I never bothered to learn his name, so I couldn't give that vital piece of information to her. I had gone right to bed when he had arrived at Beatrice's place, not seeing a single person at the party. My mom confirmed that someone with that description was at the party and that she would talk to him and he wouldn't be invited over again. That was the end of that, until a couple of months later, my birthday. An excuse for my mom to throw a party at our house this time. This time my brother was in the house as well. Before the party started, my mom made me sleep in her room because her room was the only room that had a lock. My brother would have to sleep in my room with another child that was brought to the party. As I laid in my bed, I felt uneasy. Was he here? Would the same thing happen? This time I was worried not only for my safety, but for my younger brothers as well, and for the little boy who was also sleeping over. I didn't fall asleep this time. I was determined to stay awake, because what if I wasn't the target this time, but it was my innocent little brother that had the target on his back? Don't mess with a little girl's brother. I heard the door start to jingle. Not again, I thought. I knew that he would be here. To this day, I don't know how I knew without even knowing who was downstairs at the party. This is why to this day, I can always count on my instinct. Mind you, I was a young child who was terrified, but was determined. If he got in, I would scream. Click. After hearing this sound, I immediately knew he'd gotten in, and sat up right away facing the door, ready to scream if he tried to get close to me. "You are sleeping?" he asked. I just stared at him, making sure not to breathe too fast or to make any sudden movements. "You're sexy, baby." Silence. "Come drink with me." It wasn't a question. It sounded more like an order. Now, I thought. "No." I started to moan, and I made sure that my no kept getting higher pitched and louder. "Okay, okay." He tried to quickly shush me and left immediately. I made sure to wait a couple of minutes and left the safety of my bedroom and went to my room where my brother was and the little boy. I had a king-sized bed, so we easily all fit in, and I was determined not to leave these little kids. They didn't know what this man was capable of, and I was going to protect him if it was the last thing I did. I was wide awake, and it had been maybe 30 minutes since the man with the glasses had come into my mom's room. When I heard my mom's voice and another voice getting closer to the door, yes, my lovely mother was coming back to check up on my brother to see if he was asleep, and I knew this was my chance to tell her about the man who came into my room. I got out of bed and started to walk to the door. When she slowly opened it and saw me, I froze. Right beside her, talking to my mom, was the man. The man who had come into my room twice now, and who could have easily done horrible things to me. Mind you, at the age I didn't know about sex or rape or anything of the sort, so I thought he wanted to kill me. But he was right there. "Why aren't you in my room?" my mom asked, confused. I started to cry hard. "He came in my room," I sobbed. "Who?" "Who?" the man asked. "You," I cried harder. "Me?" he said, pointing at himself, as if he didn't hear me right. "Yeah. I wanted to protect Evan, Mommy. I was scared he'd come back for Evan," I whimpered. "She's told me you've come into her room before. Are you kidding me?" "Go to my room, Delilah, and lock the door," my mom whispered harshly. The whole time the man was denying he didn't do anything and was trying to convince my mother that I was imagining things. I went to my mother's room and laid on my mom's bed. I could hear my mom crying and telling him to leave. I heard more people talking, and then a few minutes later, the music came back on, and I fell asleep. I don't know if he left the party or not, but I do know that no one tried to get into my room again that night. A year after telling my dad, and him wanting his name and telling me that he'd kill him if he saw him, I haven't given it much thought. My mom and I went to a multicultural building in our town because she needed some paperwork done and whatnot. Walking into the building, I saw the man crouch down, doing some type of woodwork on the floors. He sees us and immediately says hello to my mom, to which my mom says hello happily, and they chit-chat for a bit before we went on our way. The man did not look at me once. He maybe said hello to me too, but I don't remember any interaction whatsoever. I was annoyed that my mom was so chipper and happy to talk to the man who broke into my room twice. But being her good little daughter, I didn't want to tell her any of that. It had seemed as if she had forgotten all about him forcing himself into a locked room. That was the last time I ever saw him, and that was maybe 9 or 10 years ago.
One day, back when I was working as a hostess at the hotspot, a woman strolled into the restaurant looking rather shifty. I cheerily greeted her as she came through the front door, but she continued on past the front desk with not so much as a glance in my direction. As a hostess, I was used to being ignored by customers, and I figured she was just too focused on trying to find someone she was supposed to be meeting for lunch. Discreetly following her, I kept a few paces behind in case she needed my help. That is, until she finally came to a stop behind a nearby table. She stood there for a minute, nervously clutching her purse and eyeing the man sitting in the back booth. His back was facing her, and she ducked up and down to get a better view of the guy. I thought maybe she was meeting him on a blind date, and she was trying to size up the guy before deciding to take a seat or run. It was weird, however. The man had only asked for a table for one when he entered the restaurant. "May I help you?" I asked politely. She shook her head, so I walked towards the front desk, making sure to be available if she needed a menu or not. She finally took a deep breath and approached the table, quickly sliding to the booth to face him. No hello or hey, how are you? They just started up what seemed like to be the middle of a conversation that they had before. And it was a really heated discussion, if I may say so myself. The man's plate arrived at the table, and their waiter asked the woman if she'd like anything. She shook her head and continued to stare at the man who was now picking up his knife and fork to eat. After about 10 minutes, I could hear the woman's voice more and more as the conversation grew more intense. The man was trying to shush her, but she wouldn't have it. He finally had enough and asked the waiter for the bill. The server placed it on the table and walked away to give the two of them some space. Before I knew it, The man was coming up to the front desk, asking me to quickly get the waiter because he needed to leave right away. I got their waiter and the man paid, all the while as the woman stared angrily at him. He walked out of the restaurant, saying a quick thank you as the woman stayed behind, still sitting in the booth. As I walked by, I was a little scared. She had that "you're dead to me" look that Lily sometimes got on How I Met Your Mother. She was fuming. And then suddenly, she was up and running out of the restaurant. I went to the front door to look out the window into the parking lot and saw her yelling at him as he was opening the door to his car. She continued to run towards him and threw herself between him and the driver's side door, slamming the door shut to prevent him from getting in. The man then calmly walked around the car to the passenger side door and unlocked it to slide into the seat. The woman pulled the door open on her side as the man climbed to the driver's seat. She threw herself onto him, her legs dangling out of the car. He tried desperately to push her off, but she'd wedged her legs into the door of the car so that there was no way he was getting her off of him. She tried to hold on for dear life. He attempted to exit the car by the passenger side. Meanwhile, people walking by were starting to watch the scene unfold as the man finally freed himself from her grasp. I quickly ran behind the front desk so he wouldn't notice me, watching the craziness of what happened outside. I saw the woman getting out of the car and slamming the driver's door, as he, very politely I might add, asked me to call a cab. So I did. He waited in the front lobby as the woman paced around outside, waiting for him to come out. She had finally had enough of waiting and stormed into the restaurant and took a seat right next to him. I mean, she literally made sure the whole side of her body was touching his. And then she just glared at him as he blankly stared ahead. She talked. He didn't. I finally saw the cab pull up to the front door, so I told the man that his cab had arrived. He thanked me and got up to leave. The woman shouted at him not to go, but he wouldn't listen. As he climbed into the cab with her yelling at him, she did the same thing as when she was trying to get into his own car. She threw herself onto him, making sure that dangling her legs out of the car door so the driver could not get away. After 5 minutes, I could tell the cab driver was starting to get extremely angry. He yelled at them both to get out before driving away, never looking back. By this time, the man was finally starting to yell. I could see him yelling at her to get away from him. He attempted to get back into his car, but she was a complete maniac. I saw him trying to push her away from the car door, and then suddenly he was running off. He had somehow grabbed her own set of keys and was running to her car. She was chasing after him and caught up to him before she could figure out which keys was for her car, and a screaming match began. All the while, he was trying to fake her out by running back to his car and then quickly spinning around and going to hers. Finally, he gave up trying, and it was a wave of screaming and crying from the girl. She tried to wrestle her keys away from him, but he held it on for all his might, and then he did something that made me think. Did he really just do that? I even asked out loud to the other waiters who were joining me to watch the crazy show in the parking lot. We were shocked. The man had thrown her keys into the middle of a busy street and made a run for it as she watched where they landed. She stared with her mouth hanging open as she realized what he'd done. He ran as if he was running for his life, and you could see the split-second decision-making the woman was doing. She decided to make a run for her keys as the man jumped into his car. At that moment, no cars were driving down the road, so she ran right into the middle, grabbing her keys like a football player running drills, and made a mad dash for his car. She was too late as he pulled out of his parking spot and headed towards the exit. She tried to run out in front of his car, but he had already pulled ahead of her before she had a chance to pretty much throw herself onto his moving vehicle. She bolted towards her own car, got into the driving seat, and drove off like the Dickens, heading in the same direction that he did. The whole day, the staff talked about what must have happened. Some thought it was just his mistress, and he just called it off and she couldn't let it go. Some thought it was his wife or his girlfriend who was checking up on him to see if he was cheating on her. Some thought it was just some psycho stalker. Whatever it was one of the weirdest moments I've ever witnessed at work.
Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please share, like, and comment, and become part of the Unity by hitting the subscribe button. If you have a scary story that you would like to share, be sure to send it to my email or post it on the free horror stories subreddit. Consider donating to this channel and be sure to follow me on Twitter. And until next time, stay spooky and never forget, there's always a reason to be afraid.